What's up, YouTube? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to Rick's Scale RC. Today's going to be a part 4 installment of the hot rod build. What's going on and where we're at with it, and going to do a little bit of work today. So, where I left off in part 3, we were waiting for leaf springs to get that front end. Well, my leaf springs came, but I've also decided to wait a little longer because I don't want to make, the truss that goes between the frame rails that mounts to the top of the leaf spring, because I have ordered the flathead. I was finally able to order that flathead from Nightcrawler's 3D, so that's on its way. So I'm just thinking I want to wait, get that motor set in where it belongs, and make sure I'm not going to run into any clearance issues. I'd hate to weld in or make a cross member to go in between them frame rails to mount to this, to mount to the leaf spring, and then not be able to get my motor in. So I'd rather just wait, get the motor in, and then if I have to do something different than what I'm planning, I'll address it at that time. But I'd rather wait. That way I don't, I don't want to screw myself over. So we're going to wait on doing that. But also in the last video I mentioned that because I had to make the custom radius arms for that, I had to get the truck sitting at ride height. In order to get the truck sitting at ride height, I had to chop the back of the frame off. So that leaves us with where we're at today. You guys saw, in the last video, the frame was chopped off. I originally really wanted to do a traditional C-notch over the back axle. The room's just not there. To do what I want to do and make it look super scale, I just don't feel that I have enough room to do it, first of all. Second of all, the material. Because normally when they C-notch something, they do, like I said in the other videos, it's usually like 1.5 inch by 3 inch rectangular tubing they'll build it out of, almost like a frame rail but boxed. It has all 4 sides. Or some people will do something custom out of 1.5 inches, or I don't think it's maybe 1.75 inches just round tubing. But it's just not there. Besides the fact that it's going to get covered up with a bed and all that work is really not going to be seen, and it's just really not necessary, the room's just not there. So what I opted to do, what I'm calling is I back halved it, and I'm calling it that because in race cars, once you step up to a big, like a 20-inch slick or 18-inch slick or something like that, you're considered a big tire car, and at that point you need to back half your car. Whether it's a unibody car or a full frame car, what they usually do is right behind the back seats, they'll chop out the frame, from the back seat back, and then what you'll do is you'll order, you can make them, a lot of people will make their own, but you can buy kits, that's the whole frame from the back seats all the way back, and it's already narrowed, it's got all your mounts for your 4-link, it's got shock mounts, and then you just pick the axle you want to put in it, and traditionally they call that back halving the car. So I'm calling it back halving the car because this is more what that would look like. As a matter of fact, I actually, when I started thinking about the idea, I started looking them up online, and this is actually a I'm not sure of the company that makes it, but it's actually, I modeled mine after one that I found online, for sale. That's kind of where it came about. All I did was take some 1/4 inch round, solid round bar, and I bent. Well, what I did first was I took a coat hanger and I just kind of started playing with something until I got the shape I wanted that resembled the back half kit that I saw online. And then I just started, you know, playing around with it. And once I was happy with it, that's when I heated up the round bar and just matched it, you know, to my coat hanger. The coat hanger was just, you know, basically a stencil. I just heated up the bar and just kept matching it up to this till I got this. After that, on the side here, make sure I'm getting that, I just welded in some plates, and there's two different holes there in case I want to move those the upper 4-link bars. But that's trying to get you in here so you can see. So you can see. And then this is going to sit up in here. Came out really good. Okay, so today what I want to try and do is get some shocks mounted. This is also this is going to be the back, kind of like the bumper piece. And I might weld some tabs onto this to screw the bed down, possibly, maybe. We'll see. But all I did here was, this is more of the solid 1/4 inch round bar. And I just stuck it in the end of the drill. You know, I got a drill bit in here now. But I just locked it down in my drill, and then I locked the trigger down on full speed. And then I took my grinder to the end of it. I got a, you know, a 4.5 inch angle grinder, and while it was spinning, I just hit the end of it with my angle grinder just around the edges. And then I took the cutoff wheel, and then I just kind of made, is that showing? Just 2 little divots, just to make it something, so it wasn't just a round, you know, you'll never see it, but it was just something to do. And then that'll get welded in the back, and that'll help, you know, it's pretty solid now. What I did was I took a piece of the, this is 3/16, and I drilled and tapped the ends of that. And then the screws that go in from either side go through the 4-link bars. I got a couple spacers there too, and then they screw in to this piece of 3/16 rod, and then that tightens up everything. It's pretty solid, no wobble, doesn't really flex much either. And then just as an extra precaution, I'm gonna weld on this little bumperette just to kind of keep the back from moving around. And then it'll also give me something a little, I'm going to weld it to the outside rather than, you know, putting these on top of this. I'm going to weld it, you know, to the face of this. That way it'll give me, like I said, a little ledge to sit the bed down on. And you know, we'll probably do something on the inside. You know, put in a little chunk of styrene or something, you know, something to catch this. And then we'll see how it works out. Like I said, I might even weld on some little tabs there to put some screws in. I've actually had a lot of luck with magnets lately. I tried some rare earth magnets, and that's actually what holds in the battery holder, and the seat, and a couple other things in that blue truck. And it's like hard. I've actually even it's hard to separate it. I've actually put like some blue painter's tape on both magnets just to make it a little bit easier to pull apart. So I think they'll work out okay. When I did this, keeping the 1/10 scale, I was keeping like a 12.3 wheelbase. So, you know, because that's what the axial trucks are. I just, you know, and they're 1/10 scale, and that's their wheelbase. So I was just kind of going that way. It's just like a reference, you know. It wasn't like a set in stone kind of thing, just a reference. But with that, I found that, you know, I played with like a piece of cardboard that I had, just kind of playing with it on the side, seeing how the bed would look, and it didn't look proportionate. The axle was pretty far back. By the time I got a bed to the back of the wheels, it was going to be a pretty long bed, and then, you know, it was going to be like a bobbed at the end. It just looked awkward to me. So we ended up kind of reconfiguring everything and moving the axle up almost an inch. So we had to reconfigure, you know, the whole rear suspension and the drive shaft again, but we're all straightened out. Like I said, we got the back half welded in, so that's good to go. And today what I'm going to work on is getting shocks mounted. Now, eventually I'm going to get some nice internal spring shocks. But for now we're going to use these axial shocks. This is a stock axial shock. And what I did was I cut the fake reservoir off, took the adjuster off, took both springs off, took the bump stop out, took the shock apart, and put a spring on the inside, and then filled it up with oil. And then it actually free travels about a ½ an inch, and then right there is where the spring is. And I've put them under the frame, kind of just like wedged under there, and it holds up the truck. I've put, you know, a couple, I actually had 2 stick packs laying across these rails, and it was still supporting it. So they might even be too spiff. They might even be too stiff. I might have to take them apart and maybe find some different springs, or cut these ones down and then stretch them out. I'm not really sure. It's definitely going to get some new shocks eventually, but for right now, this is what I got to work with. So this is what we're going to do. Since they are so big, these are, you know, they're a 90mm shock, and what I did to them kind of dropped them down to like a 70mm shock. But traditionally, you would mount your shock where you would mount your lower 4-link bar. Now you can see if I do that, the shock sticks up over the roof. So, on race cars, what they'll do is a lot of times is on the axle, they'll put a drop down bracket with a couple different holes in it for different shock adjustments, different, you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an L bracket. See the screw on the top of the axle here? There's an identical one underneath. So I'm going to take that screw out, and I'm going to replace it with a slightly longer one. But when I put that new screw in, what I'm doing here is I got all the holes drilled. This is 16 gauge steel. It's just sheet metal. And I got all the holes drilled. There's going to be 4 adjustment screws and then a mounting screw. And once I cut this strip off and then I'm going to put it in a vise and just bend them into an L. and then a screw will go up through the, you know, the short part of the L into the axle, and then the long part of the L will hang down. Now it already sits down pretty low, so I don't think having this drop bracket there is really going to hurt anything. It still sticks up about a ½ inch from the ground, so the cab's lower than that, so you know, if it's going to get stuck, it's going to get stuck on the cab before it gets to that shock mount. I really don't think it's going to be an issue. Maybe if I were to put like some low profile tires on it or something like that, they might drag, but I don't see that happening. If anything, it's going to get a beefier tire in the rear, and we'll keep these on the front. So with that said, we're going to do that for the lower, and for the upper, I'm just going to cut out of the same 16 gauge steel. I'm just going to cut, you know, little tabs, a little shock mount that's going to get welded on to this top rail, and then when we upgrade to better shocks that are possibly shorter, I can just cut that tab lower. There's going to be several holes for adjustments in case this thing is weighed down and it's dragging or something, and I need to lift it, or I'll be able to just swap, you know, holes real quick. Take out a screw, put it right back in a different hole, and be able to raise the ride a little bit. And then that'll pretty much do it for the rear. Besides the bed. I got a few more holes I got to get drilled out in this sheet metal. And then we're going to take it outside and use the grinder to cut the pieces out. And then we'll be back in. full safety first. This is where. All right, guys. That's it. Right in the. All right, what's up, guys? We're back. It is now the next day. Yesterday, I think we left off. I was going to take the truck apart, throw the camera on charge, and then I was going to go outside and tack on these two shock mounts, upper shock mounts. But as soon as I started taking the truck apart, the camera actually shut off. It was so dead. So I ended up plugging it in. I took the truck apart, and then I actually ended up getting tied up doing something at the house with the kid, and I didn't get back to it right away. So I ended up not getting back to the truck until late at night when the kid was asleep. I took the truck outside, well, just the frame, because I completely took it apart. I didn't want to take any chances welding it. So I completely took it apart, went outside, tacked on the two shock tabs, and I welded on the little bumper. And then I came inside, and I had to get it together. I couldn't wait to see it, you know, hold itself up, and I wasn't able to film because, you know, the kid was sleeping at that point. I didn't want to be talking and making a bunch of racket. So I just left it alone. So I put it together last night without filming, and it was kind of a fail anyway. It kind of bummed me out. These shocks, they work really good in my hand. They didn't work very good on the truck. What happened was, first of all, they kind of, see, that's them, and they kind of sagged to like that. And then when I would push down, it would go and not come back up. So what I did was I just grabbed another pair and just put them on, you know, without doing anything to them, and it works great. What I would like to do is get some kind of like cool internal spring shocks that would work well, just, you know, for a more scale look. But for right now, it works. I'm happy with that. And when we get some more cash together to sink into it, we'll upgrade the rear shocks for sure. But for right now, we're going to do this. I know the shock tabs or shock mounts are a little big and bulky and not very appealing, but I just needed something to mount the shock and make sure everything was going to work. I kind of plan on, you know, cutting the corners off and shaping them and making them cool. And what I would like to do is, the other shocks that I get, I'd like to get a shorter set, and then that way I could maybe use the bottom two adjustments instead of the top two, and then I can cut the, you know, the upper two off just to make that a little bit lower. Because, I mean, I know it sticks up and it's kind of odd looking now, but, you know, I'm doing the best I can and trying to keep it functioning. A lot of trial and error. Another thing, once I got it all hooked up, I noticed in my travel, as it went down, the axle was kind of cocking like that. You know, it was twisting and messing up the pinion angle, and it was like sucking the shocks underneath the axle. So I had to adjust the four links a little bit and work that out. But now the axle seems to stay pretty straight through the travel, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, it didn't at all go the way I had, you know, envisioned it. I had a few hiccups, some issues that I had to work out, but I think it works out good, or worked out good. Another thing too is I made the drop mounts for the shocks, and they actually, I mean, I know what I measured them like that, but I guess I wasn't envisioning them to look as low as they look, so I might cut off that bottom hole and move them up one notch. But again, that will raise the truck, so that's another reason why I would like to get, you know, a shorter internal spring shock, and that way I could just use like these lower two adjustments and these upper two adjustments and cut the top and the lower two off, and then, you know, just to make it more appealing, I guess you would say. And then had to clearance the cab a little bit more for that drive shaft. I still think it needs to go a little bit more, but first I took a Dremel to it. Now I'm down to like a file and some sandpaper. I just don't want to take too much out of it, you know. I want it to be perfect. And then what else? I think that's about it. You know, I just wanted to show you guys how it turned out, what the end result was. Definitely let me know what you guys think. And then for the front, I have I found these little mini Jalon 2 shocks. I think they're from RC 4-wheel drive for the Jalon 2 Mini, I believe. I found them on eBay. They were like 20 bucks for all four, and I'm like, man, because that's usually what you see on the front of a hot rod with a straight axle. You know, you see the little short stubby shocks. They're 10, 12 inches long at the most. You know, so I'm thinking, like, compared to the tire, it looks good. I know it doesn't look right next to that extreme drop axle, but I think they look good. And for right now, they shoot the front end right back up. I think once I get the leaf spring on there, I should be in pretty good shape. You know, this is with a stick pack. It does go down, but it still comes back up. And the back works good as well. I think once we get the leaf spring on there, I should be in pretty good shape. And, you know, there's not too much to go, there's not too much that needs to go on it at this point. Steering servo, the front grille, the engine. I mean, there is a good amount of things to have to go on it, but nothing really substantially heavy. So I'm not worried about it. So I mean, and if it does plop and doesn't want to come back up, then we'll figure something out. Right now, though, the eyelets are so small, I'm having trouble finding hardware. What I'd like to do is get like a fine thread hardware, a drill and a tap, and then just drill small holes into the front end, tap them, and then bolt them right to the front end. But like I said, I can't find fine thread hardware that small. It's like I think it's like M2 hardware. But what I was able to find is coarse thread stuff. So right now I just have, you know, like a block of styrene on the inside of the frame rail. And that's what I'm doing down here. I just got it through one of these screws. Don't mind the mismatched screws. I'm just using with, you know, what I got right now. I will eventually get all matching hardware for the truck. But yeah, so that's what I did. I just, you know, drilled a hole for that to go into the radius arm, and then a small little pilot hole for the coarse thread screws to screw into the styrene. And it works good. I'm real excited. I'm getting antsy now because I know it's just a matter of getting a steering servo to work and hooking up some electrics, and we could actually drive this thing. I'm like, ah! So hopefully we can get everything else going smooth. I got a really cool idea to mount the servo and for steering linkage, so I can't wait to get to that point. I don't know if that'll be the next video or the video after that. I think I've already mentioned it in the video yesterday, but I'm not sure. I have spoke to Nightcrawlers 3D. Spoke to him yesterday. He confirmed my shipping address, so I believe the motor is in the mail. We should have a flathead by the end of the week, which will work out perfect for filming next week's video. And hopefully it'll be mounting a flathead engine in there. And then once that's done, we'll get that leaf spring in the front, and then bam, the front end is, at least suspension wise, is completed. And we just got to move on to, you know, getting it to steer. which I don't think is going to be a problem because I got a pretty cool plan. It's going to be custom, it's going to be cool, it's going to look good, it's going to function well, at least in my head. This is so I'm excited to move forward with that. And then I've got to get a grill mounted. I think this grill is awesome, but I think a 32 Ford grill would look really good in there, but we'll see. And then I want to make some door handles, mirrors. We got to get windshield and rear window for it. It's getting down to not that it's almost finished, but it's getting to like all the little fine details. But pretty much the big stuff is done now. Almost, sort of, kind of. But that's it. Let me turn it around again so you guys can see it. And I don't know, let me see. Let me get it closer. Kind of hard to tell. You want to see the flex? See the hot rod flex? Oh, front wheels up. There we go. I think RCeveryday's farm truck might have me beat on that. Ain't getting much flex out of that. That's it. But I think that'll complete this week's video, guys. Thanks again to all the new subscribers. Thanks again for watching. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Alright, take care.